Here we go, one last video on different types of theories, and be careful, I didn't say one last, because of course our last video for this particular topic is going to involve using these theories of motivation to actually get organizational change. But here we're going to talk about the regulation theories of motivation a little bit. And so we can talk about regulation, either self-regulation or social regulation, but self-regulation is basically the things that we do to monitor our behaviors and adjust our behaviors in the pursuit of a goal. Dude, get off the table. Sorry, cat is not allowed on table. Okay, so self-regulation, right? We find that, hey, back it up, back it up, back it up. Regulation theories deal with, will, or instead of intentions or choices. Hey, off the table. All right, so now there are these regulation theories of motivation come into play after a goal has already been chosen, and the question becomes, how do I get there? How do I achieve that goal? And so modifying our behavior to get the goals. The original goal-setting theory started with Kurt Lewin. Kurt Lewin was a Gestalt psychologist, and a Gestalt psychologist basically their premise, perhaps you know, the Gestalt psychologist said the whole is more than the sum of its parts, right? That there's something more than just that a whole unit is more than a composition of it, like water. Water is clearly something radical. If you take 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen, you get water. What the hell is that? Because the whole water is most certainly something more than just hydrogen and oxygen. Well, this idea from Gestalt psychology, Levine took it a little further, and he essentially had a basic idea. See, in Western thought, Western philosophy, it is often based on this causal nature of the world. Like A causes B, B causes C, C causes D, D causes E. Right? And Levine basically had a conception that this is absolutely and utterly false. He says, instead of the conception of A causes B and B causes C, etc., A causes B, C, D, E, F, and G to change, and when those change, guess what? They're going to make A change again, and then that's going to make A, and so you change one part, every other part changes, and then changes in the other parts feed back in and force another change, and eventually they'll seek balance. Okay, but you change one part, everything changes and flops itself, and this permeates goal-setting theory. So now goals affect behaviors in 4 different ways. And when we talk goals, they're much like drives from some of the earlier talking we had about motivation theory, in that they energize and direct. So we're going to use different words here. They mobilize on-task effort. Energize, we talked about that earlier. They enable us to persist. Didn't we talk about persistence in the earlier stuff? They direct our attention, okay? They focus us. And more specifically, they facilitate strategies used in blah, 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 blah. In other words, they don't just mobilize us, persist us, but they bring out strategies to attain a goal, okay? They pull out the cognitive strategies that we have to do this. And so motivation is enhanced when employees are committed to specific, difficult goals, and when feedback about progress towards those goals is in fact provided. Okay? Some of the social cognitive theories comes out of some of Bandura's other work. And social cognitive theories say that the cognitive components, the behavioral components, the individual and environmental factors, they all come together to determine motivation. So in order to understand motivation, you can't just look at the individual, but you have to look at the larger social cognitive, social environment as well. And so Bandura was primarily involved in self-regulation, but his work has been, broadened to larger contexts. But self-regulation has the 3 major components. Self-observation, okay, which is the ability to look at ourselves, use ourselves as a model, okay. Self-evaluation, There I am. Which is basically what kind of feedback processes do we have? How do we correct our own behaviors? And self reactions. In other words, what kind of internal responses, or cognitive and emotional even responses, do we have to our self evaluation? Is self criticism of ourselves something that we see as detrimental to performance or something of this nature? And then finally, Bandura's social cognitive theory really requires us to understand self efficacy expectations. In the same way that we talked about a moderator variable in expectancy theory, here we go again, expectations. But it's a moderator again, and that is each individual, it's an individual difference variable. Self-efficacy expectations is like how much we believe that our capabilities will get things done. How much ability do we have control over life events? It's not just enough to have the skills, you have to believe you have the capabilities. Again, this is related to learned helplessness. It's clearly not the same, but it's in the same vein. It's the amount to which you believe that you can, in fact, control the world and control the outcomes. Another one of these regulatory ones is actually really quite classic. I mean, this control theory, though we're going to try to apply it here in more of an organizational sense, but clearly control theory is at the very core of the most basic motives, such as hunger, okay? That is, I have, let's say, hunger as a result of low blood sugar level or something. And so I have a desired blood sugar level, and I have an actual blood sugar level. And if my actual blood sugar level falls below my desired blood sugar level, I will feel hunger. Hunger is an unpleasant state, and I will be motivated to reduce that unpleasant state. Okay? And so, in other words, what happens is the system feeds back on itself. In the classic example, we look at a thermostat in our home. And so what happens is we set the thermostat. Look at this. This thermostat looks like it's pretty well in balance, okay? We see the left side equals the current temperature in the home. The right side equals the desired temperature. And so what happens is that we set the desired temperature on the thermostat. My wife has it set at 68 degrees right now. And so what happens is the thermostat desires 68 degrees. Now, it's cold out today, so what's going to happen is that, of course, that cold creeps in and brings the actual temperature down below 68. Now, there's some degree of discrepancy allowed. If I'm desiring 68 and it hits 67, it's probably not going to trigger the furnace. But if it gets to 66, it's out of balance. And if it's desired 68 and its actual is 66, the input, the standard is 68, the input is 66. There's a comparator inside that thermostat. And what happens is if there is out of balance, then it creates the output or a behavior. Now, in this case, that behavior is literally turning on the furnace today. And so what happens is that this act of output, this behavior, does in fact impact the environment, right? It changes the temperature. And so the change in temperature then comes back into the input. Now that comparison between the standard and the input has now changed until eventually it's 68 in standard, 68 input, bing, equals each other, and the comparator says turn off the behavior. Okay? And so it's quite a powerful idea how we compare what we want and what we have. So people are goal-directed and use goals, intentions, and values in daily lives to move forward. We compare what we are at, we compare what we want to be, we change our behaviors to make the two come back in balance. Okay? And so their discrepancy is more important for those high in self-focus. What this basically means is, as I just said, I'm pointing to my thermostat, but what do you know, right? My thermostat wants 68, it has 67, it's okay with that, okay? It can't turn on, or can you imagine having this tiny little Oh, it wants 68, but it's 67.9. Oh, turn on the furnace, right? It would constantly be on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off, right? Instead, what happens is my thermostat's probably got a 2-degree window there. So it wants 68, and so I don't know what it's programmed. I mean, I'm not an electrician, but it's programmed for 68. It probably gets triggered at like 66, and then it probably heats the house to maybe 70, and then that leaves it there so that it creeps down slowly to 68, 60. I don't know what the frame is there, but clearly there has to be a discrepancy built into the system, just like there has to be a discrepancy built into your system, okay? If every single time you had even a tiny tinge of hunger, you immediately triggered food-seeking behaviors, you would pretty much be dominated by food-seeking behaviors, okay? Okay, so that is the major theories of motivation. So in the very last topic here in topic 9, we'll talk about how we can apply these, because again, remember, it's all about the kachinga. So how can I use the motivational theories to enhance job performance?